So, what a first race that was. I think there's going to be lots and lots of lots of fallout over the next few weeks from it, both good and bad. I'm where to start? Do we start with the regs? Do we start with the battle for the lead? To be honest, there's only one place really to start, and that's not a positive start, and that is Oscar Piastri. I mean, this Australian curse, it has hit proper hard this weekend. For some content creators who were there, like doing some stuff at the track, he didn't even make it round to them at turn 8. And, going straight into the wall, at turn, I mean, it was between turn 4 and 5, he was sort of entering turn 5 as, because of the way those corners flow. It was on the exit of 4, and as you get back across to 5, and he's just clipped that curb, and it's just sent him straight into the wall. And I'm slightly concerned about that because we've had two incidences this weekend where the car has basically gone, I'm just going to send you off into the wall. In terms of big profile ones, there's probably been little ones where they've managed to hold it, but with Max Verstappen in qualifying, I mean, everybody who saw that Red Bull go off, everybody thought it was Hadjar. Absolutely everybody in that moment thought that's Isaac Hadjar. As soon as you see Max Verstappen is the one that's crashed, you instantly think what's happened here, because it's such a it's an incident or a type of incident that he just doesn't do. Right? It's not in his characteristic. He doesn't make mistakes like that. Maybe back in 2017, 2016, maybe, but not in 2026. And you just suddenly saw these cars just spearing off, and I find it slightly concerning that two very, very, very good drivers who were fighting for the World Championship last year have been thrown off by their cars into the wall. I don't know with the Oscar Piastri one whether it was him or whether it was the car, but being the fact that he was just going round and the car just goes straight into the wall, I mean, that was almost like a crash that you see when they're racing in the wet. The touching of the curb, and it just sends you round and you go spearing off. A bit like what Fernando Alonso happened last year at I think it was turn 7, and round turn 8, going backwards into the wall because, again, get on the white line and that kind of thing. So it's a very odd incident, and the telemetry just, for me, just feels like there's something in the system of the car that's gone wrong there. It's just something's gone wrong. Maybe Oscar Piastri isn't concentrating fully on where he needs to put his car at that given moment because of maybe a certain issue that's happening. But yeah, hopefully that kind of thing is just a one-off, and it's just the Australian curse that's hit. Because then obviously that means, for all those Aussie fans, I mean, imagine if you're going to your home race and you're, the home star, be it a Lewis Hamilton or this year, George Russell as well, Lando Norris, one of them. I mean, the Lando Norris grandstand, remember last year? Imagine if Lando Norris had binned it on the way to the grid. Imagine what that would have done just to the whole atmosphere around the place. The Aussie fans are absolutely brilliant, and thank goodness, they didn't go. They stayed and watched all the racing that came since, and enjoyed a very, very, very good first part of the race. Let's put it that way. And the only reason this race wasn't actually generational was because of a Ferrari mess up again at a virtual safety car. I mean, as soon as Lewis Hamilton says, I think we should come in, you at least box one of them. Like, Lewis is hardly ever wrong when it comes to stuff like this. Hardly ever, right? He will question things, and sometimes you just need to go, if he's questioning something and saying, we should be doing this, why aren't Ferrari listening to him? Why aren't they listening to him? It's just like I don't get it. It was clear that was such a perfect opportunity to stop, and we didn't know whether it was going to be a 1 or a 2 stop from them, but with the fact that the speed limit at the race was going to be dropped to 60 kilometres an hour, means pit lane loss was going to be absolutely huge in terms of the difference between the VSC and full racing speed. Now, yes, they got very unlucky with the fact that the second VSC meant the pit lane had to be closed. But you can't just gamble on the fact that your car's going to break down in the right place for you. You take the opportunity when it's there, because you don't know if it's going to happen again. You don't know when or where a car's going to break down. And so I just look at it and go, what on earth were they doing? Because up until that point, I mean, the battling that was going on. I mean, we were on like say like lap 7 or lap 8, and we had Charles Leclerc and George Russell had already gone wheel to wheel a few laps, and then Lewis Hamilton joins the party. Kimi Antonelli then joins the party after that after his shocking start. I mean, it was so unbelievable to watch, and suddenly we're going. And this is where I've got a bit of a problem with some F1 fans here. I think we're all being very hypocritical because we spent pretty much the last 2, maybe 2.5 years going, you can't overtake. You know, you can't do anything, all that kind of stuff. You know, we want cars to be able to follow. We want cars to be able to overtake. And then we've been given a race where Australia is typically quite hard to overtake. And we've been given a race where cars are going backwards and forwards. We've got to fight for the lead. We've had people overtaking into, you know, corners that you wouldn't necessarily think you're overtaking into and going wheel to wheel. You know, cars being able to fight back on the exit. We've been praying for that sort of stuff. Now, did it get a little bit too much? Maybe. Maybe it did get too much. I mean, the fact that it was a bit weird seeing them slow down on a straight after running out of battery, I mean, that's just going to be a unique thing, I think, with these regs. I think we're going to get used to that. And up to a point, I think when they develop the battery to be more efficient and the way they recharge it and the way they'll make it last longer, because I think how long you can stay on the battery is going to be one of those important factors. Can you elongate a battery to give you the power all the way down a straight, even if that means that actual deployment on the battery is less? You know, can they do something like that to make the cars look a bit better? And then you give them the boost mode when they're trying to overtake, which, again, you saw the way Charles Leclerc and George Russell were fighting each other. We could have had that all race, and it might have gotten ridiculous. But, I don't know, I liked it. I liked the battle for the lead. You know, you didn't quite know who was going to do. Can you pull away? Can you get away from the battery and all that kind of stuff? So yeah, I want to give these regs a real big chance here. Some people are saying, "Oh, it's not racing." Just, you know, if you know, complain all you want, right? But unfortunately, the amount of money that has been spent on these regs, we aren't going to go back to the old cars. We aren't going to go back to no overtaking. And I think the FAA, yeah, they want to try and say, look, we're trying to create more overtaking. And yeah, then we get on to what's obviously, you know, happened since. I mean, the fact that they're muting people and hiding comments that are negative is just madness. I mean, yes, okay, you could disagree, you could be upset. In the FIA, you could be upset with people, but don't do that. I mean, you know, it does make it seem very sort of dictatorship wise with it, where you can only say certain things, and if you don't say positive things, then you're going to be censored. I don't like that. You know, it's all about, you know, things like that. Us being able to have debates about, you know, I'm probably in the minority here in saying I loved that race. And I'm really looking forward to races like Hungary, like Singapore. I mean, the Singapore sprint, I'm already looking at it going, if we get Singapore to be absolute beautiful racing where people are fighting back and boosting down towards turn 7, I mean, I'm all in. Sign me up to the Singapore Grand Prix, because that could be a generational Grand Prix. But also, because of what's happened before, it could end up with all the cars breaking down, because it affected the Mercedes at like 10 years ago, where suddenly they couldn't push the battery because of like I think it's to do with the subway system and things like that. So let's give the regs a chance. It was a bit silly in qualifying, but overall in the race it was kind of all right, and you know, that's what's important. Qualifying, maybe the focus will no longer be qualifying, and it's not a qualifying championship anymore, and we're going to get racing. The race starts are going to be chaotic and brilliant. You know, cars not getting off the line is a feature of racing. You know, get onto that point, right? And people are talking about the whole Liam Lawson. I mean, him not getting off the line and Colapinto with the save. I mean, to first of all not hit Liam Lawson, and then not to go into the wall and then not hit another car as you then trying to straight up. I mean, that is already up there with what is going to be save of the season, or avoidance of the season in terms of a crash. I don't think we're going to get. I mean, it's mad to say that we're not going to get a bigger one than that. So, madness, complete madness with that. But you see it in Formula 2 and Formula 3, cars don't get off the line. We've had it in Formula E where cars don't get off the line. As long as it's not stupid, it's fine. Because, again, like, this kind of stuff where you want cars to have different starts. Getting bogged down off the line, wheel spin, getting poor stuff, getting swamped off the start. It was always the irony of, let's say, like, I remember one Belgian Grand Prix, I can't remember who it was, but he started on the front row, and they just didn't go anywhere, and was sixth going into La Source. And you think how short that run, that run down to La Source is. So, I mean, that's going to be interesting. The run from La Source all the way down to the Kebble Straight, or the run, yeah, that's going to be fun. But, well, with Australia, we had good racing. We had a few DNFs. Less than what everybody thought, including what I thought. I thought we were going to have a slightly ridiculous race where we were going to have, like, loads of cars breaking down like we did in sort of the in the noughties and that kind of stuff in the early 10s, where, like, you would have, like, 7 DNFs and, loads of people would just be blowing up, and there would be safety car upon safety car upon safety car, all this kind of stuff that we had, what was it? We had the Aston Martins who did, in quite a few laps, actually. Still not being able to complete a race, but, they didn't do badly, for what our expectations were, whether we were even going to make the start. You had the Audi, obviously, of Hulkenberg, who unfortunately, again, that again is just a gremlin. And I think, with Bortoleto doing what he's doing, I think Audi are going to be absolutely fine for this season. Formerly Sauber, they've got all the team there, they've built up their car. And then the Cadillac, brand new F1 team, again, yeah, they have had a breakdown, and they managed to get to the finish with the other car, and that's important for these teams to get as many laps in as possible. You catch up. So I don't think there were any more DNFs. Oh yeah, Hadjar, of course, in the Red Bull, and he was saying straight away, that Red Bull, I think what we're going to see this year is that Red Bull's going to be quick, but it's just going to break down a lot. And whatever's happened to Hadjar there, hopefully it's not going to infringe on engine. The thing is, the engine penalties are going to get ridiculous this year. I think we're going to get so many shuffled up grids with people taking second engines. I think Russell's already on a second part of his engine for a couple of them, and he's only allowed 2 all season. So why that is, maybe he's just taking it just so he's using it for practice or something in China to try and sort of elongate out maybe the race one. China coming up. Yeah, I'm jumping around a bit because actually I'm just really, like, so much stuff happened, and it was a really good race. For Australia, it was a proper good race. And this is what we want. If Australia is producing good races, you can only think that actually there might be places where we'll be able to see great racing. I still don't think we're going to see an improvement in places like Monaco, but in places like, let's say, a Hungary, as I've said before, that, because the straight isn't long enough for them to maybe use all their battery up, they're going to be going so quick into that hairpin that it could be absolute chaos there. Yeah. But the only last thing I want to touch on really before I end this little video about the Australian GP was Formula 2 and the incident that happened there. Kamara, like I said, getting a very solid P2 in the feature race, but Dunn saying what he did, I forget off the top of my head what he said, but he said something along the lines of he's not going to let his teammate beat him again this season, or he sees how it is. And he's since apologised for it, but it's like, you're saying something like that for an incident that was, like, completely your fault. Like, it was a brake check. It was almost like a really aggressive brake check, and he's DNF'd them both, and they're in the same team. I think it was Stenchorn that he's racing, and he's like, Stenchorn did nothing wrong. He just held his line and done just literally just in front of him, just goes brake right straight into him. So, it's quite disappointing that he said what he said, and maybe he's in the heat of the moment. And of course, he has apologised since, and of course, those kind of things probably moved under. He probably went back, said what he said, and then probably looked back at the footage and went, actually, that's my fault. And he probably then felt really, really bad and that kind of stuff. And then he obviously has to do all the answers in the media, and then all the reaction obviously happens with everybody, piling in on him before he could even get to social media to actually post saying, sorry and that kind of thing. So, yeah. But we had a couple of big incidents, didn't we? I mean, the F3, the two primers decided to destroy turn 6. I mean, that barrier had to be rebuilt completely after that, with two cars that, again, they just did not give each other space in any room. Clearly, the power dynamics are going on within these teams, and I think there's a lot of drivers who are realising maybe 2027, if there's going to be a surplus of drivers who don't like these regs in Formula 1, because there's been a few who are very much vocal about not liking it. I think some of them, because their car just isn't at the front, I've got to be brutal about that. I think there's some drivers who, if their car was at the front, they'd be very, very happy with these regs. You saw how George Russell reacted. I'm sure if his car wasn't any good, I'm sure he'd be complaining about the rules. I'm sure he would. So, I think there's just a few of them that see an opportunity possibly to get into Formula 1 in the next couple of seasons, and they need to lay their marker down. And as I say, Kamara, Solov drove a brilliant race to win the feature. I don't think Solov is going to be in the championship fight, but we'll see what happens with him. But again, I think Kamara is going to be up there. I think, we're done. I think hopefully he won't have just an incident-filled season like he did last. I mean, he had a few, like I said in the previous video, he had a few instances that just weren't his fault, and this time round he's been involved in an incident that was just completely his fault. Completely unnecessary on lap 3 of a race, or lap 2, lap 3 on a race to do that. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, going into China, it's a sprint race, so I'm hoping the sprint will be chaotic. I haven't looked at the weather, but I assume it's going to be dry because I've not seen anybody going, it's going to rain. So, I mean, I think we just need a series of dry races at the moment just for people to understand the cars and get used to the battery deployments and all that kind of stuff. Because I think if we had a wet race in Australia, I think we could have had 7 cars finish. Because you look at what happened to Oscar Piastri and Max Verstappen, that could have easily that's gonna be so interesting when we get a wet race to see what happens there, and where we get it. It's going to be even more interesting. Are we going to get it at a Silverstone? Are we going to get it at a Barcelona possibly? It doesn't rain very often there, but it has rained. It did rain once, but this was like back in when Schumacher was driving for Ferrari. So 25 years ago now it rained there. I don't recall a wet race, but I'm sure there's probably somebody will tell me if there is. So yeah, China. I mean, the predictions are probably it'll be another Mercedes 1-2. Maybe a Ferrari will win the sprint. I think Hamilton just goes very, very well around China, so I'd suspect he's going to be even closer, if not quicker than Leclerc. So I don't know if Leclerc's ever done that well around China. I don't remember him doing massively great things in China, but yeah. So I think Hamilton might have the edge on Leclerc, but I mean, if they can get both of them on that second row with those starts that Ferrari can do, I mean, Leclerc going from P4 to P1 quite easily, and they can just use each other and get away. Could the Ferraris use each other just to get up the road? That'll be a question that maybe is going to be a factor. If a team can get themselves as a 1-2, can they use each other with the battery to get ahead and get away from the others? Because if that can be a ploy, it could be fun. And yeah, maybe we'll see an interesting strategy, because I think China can be reasonably high tyre wear. I'd be surprised if it was another 1 stop. I hope it's not. I want 2 stops. If we're going to get 1 stops all the time, then nothing's really changed on that front from Pirelli, but at least the tyres seem to be seem to be safe and not, delaminating or anything like that, which is good. So yeah, that's all that's all I'm going to say. I think in terms of China, number of DNFs is going to be my recurring theme. I'm going to go with, let's go with 7 DNFs, and that includes if any car doesn't start. Okay, if you don't start, it does mean that you haven't finished in my eyes, because in order to finish, you kind of need to start anyway. So that's what I'm going with. Is 7 cars won't see the checkered flag in the race. In the sprint, maybe 2, but we'll see what happens there. But yeah, take care, and that is our first one done, and then we'll see what the second one brings. 1 down, probably 24 to go, depending on other different circumstances there. Right. Cheers.